Greenspan didn't do enough to regulate subprime and other mortgages, and he left interest rates too low. And under questioning, he acknowledged a flaw in his belief that markets would regulate themselves.
You found a flaw in the reality.
Flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely.
That's Alan Greenspan, the longest Federal Reserve chairman in history, getting lectured by Congress for a lack of regulations and for having interest rates too low for too long, Mitch. I mean, absolutely crazy, especially when we have charts like this that are absolutely parabolic, absolutely wild. Fast forward to today, and we have an everything collapse going on right now and multiple recessionary indicators that are flashing. We're going to ask the question today whether or not we're already in recession. And obviously, I have Mitch. Happy Monday, Mitch. Obviously, the lawsuits are piling in. The witnesses are piling in. Homeowners from 48 different states have already reached out. Someone from Canada, New Zealand. People are reaching out like crazy. We have 28 videos shot for the template already, how to fight property appraisals. Mitch, and we almost, Mitch, so close, my friend, so close. We almost got your audio fixed. We almost got your audio fixed today. How you doing, buddy?
Okay, well, there's always tomorrow. We'll keep working on the audio, but we're doing the best that we can. But we're working on it. And then, yes, somebody reached out from New Zealand, and that literally shows you how far this cancer has spread. The amount of evidentiary documents just in the last 5 days, because people are beginning to realize that it's the evidence itself, it's the comparisons that they've been handed that are, for the most part, completely fraudulent. They're just simply made up. And they're beginning to realize that they have to understand how to put it together themselves in order to fight at the appraisal review board level.
And if you guys are just joining us and you don't know what Mitch is talking about, Mitch is leading the charge. I'm trying to keep up with him, but he's leading the charge trying to take down the corruption on the central appraisal district level. Essentially, Mitch has found and uncovered an overwhelming amount of fraud that has been there the whole time systemically, and that it affects 144 million households. Literally, you guys, each and every one of us. But regardless, I want to dig in, Mitch, to some recessionary indicators that are flashing warning signals right now. And we're going to zoom in and we're going to talk about a Zero Hedge article. But before I do that, Mitch, let's listen to this video from Obama.
We're watching their life savings disappear. And many, many Americans are both anxious and uncertain of what the future will hold. Now, I don't believe it's too late to change course, but it will be if we don't take dramatic action as soon as possible. If nothing is done, this recession could linger for years.
Before we dig into those recessionary indicators that are flashing warning signs right now, Mitch, do you think that we should have been allowed to stay in recession? Should we have been allowed to stay in recession without these bailouts of the past?
Well, in reality, we should have let every entity that was bankrupt go bankrupt, including the U.S. government, if necessary. So that's a bit of a tough thing to understand. But all that has happened is we have exported our U.S. treasuries and our debt to other nations that bought off on the same problem because they themselves refuse to tell their truth to their own citizens. So multiple countries are in this up to their eyeballs. Like London is falling apart at the seams right now. And it's not the first time they've done it, right? In 1986, they were in big trouble. So the reality is you can keep blowing these bubbles, but eventually the bubbles pop, and that's where we are right now. So Obama was no different than other presidents. They just keep listening to the talking heads. And I would truthfully have loved to have dinner one time with Greenspan because he's a fascinating character. But the reality of it was and is, as I've said, the Federal Reserve should never have existed. It was probably the largest economic mistake ever created.
But do you think that, going back to the great financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, I mean, do you think that there could have, because remember, and we're explaining this to the viewers, after 2009, they did an additional bailout called Operation Twist, hundreds of billions of dollars to Wall Street. That happened, you guys, in 2012. Mitch, is there like a happy median? Do you think that they maybe should have let us in recession for longer? Prices would have reset more, or do you just think no Fed at all, zero Fed? What do you think? Happy median?
No Fed at all. Let the market do what it does. Let it set the interest rates. And the reason why, if you think about all these talking heads, you look at Obama, you look at Clinton, they repeat what they're being told from people like at the Federal Reserve. And the bottom line is, why did the Federal Reserve F this up so horribly? Well, because they're not at the local level. And if you understand anything about real estate, it's local, right? So they're on the macro picture, blowing bubbles, while at the macro level, where mom and pop is, that's where it really matters. Because if you break the economic engine, which is mom and pop, you destroy the macro level simultaneously. So the truth of the matter is, it's all local. It all starts with our own houses. It all starts with our own balance sheets, and it goes uphill from there. So your ability to earn a living is what the federal government receives its taxes on. Your ability to pay the local real estate taxes is what your state and school district, your state, city, and school districts get their taxes on. So you've got multiple things pushing, but if you break the economic engine, there is no taxes for anybody to pay. It's local, local, local.
Well said, as usual, Mitch. Let's dig in now to these. And by the way, I'm excited about this because I've never gone over these new indicators with our channel. And you guys, when I'm going over these indicators with you, I want you to ask this question. All right. And we'll go to Mitch and we'll ask him the same question. But are we already in recession? Take a look. Starting with one of, I almost said, and shame on me, Mitch, I've said this is one of the most trusted indicators of a recession, an incoming recession. And it may actually prove to be true, but you've made multiple points when looking at the 10-year treasury versus the inversion of the 2-year treasury and how it's pretty much garbage because of the way it's being manipulated. And because, the fact is it really doesn't affect necessarily mom and pop, but regardless, we're uninverted. So history would say, looking at the 10 and the 2 inversion, being that we're uninverted now, that recession's right around the corner. But moving on, key recession indicator gives stronger recession signal in August. This is from September 8th, again from Zero Hedge. Now, this is a brand new recession indicator called the McKelvey PMES Combined Recession Indicator. So we're actually going to see 3 new recession indicators. Now, just to explain this real quick, and this is interesting, what is the McKelvey Recession Indicator? Take the current value of the 3-month unemployment rate average, subtract 12-month low, and if the difference is 0.30 percentage points or more, then a recession has started. I repeat, a recession has started. This was created by Edward McKelvey, a senior economist at Goldman Sachs. Now, this article does say that there are several false indicators, but it's also saying that it hasn't been false since 1958. So it's interesting because it calls Claudia Sahm out. Listen to this. Claudia Sahm, a former Fed economist, revised the rule, claiming it as her own without credit to McKelvey. That is insane. And then set the indicator to 0.50. So it's just, the drama, my goodness. Here's his indicator right here. And you guys are seeing this shoot up. And again, this is not a false indicator. Apparently, again, this is hit. Again, it says right here, no false negatives since 1953, Mitch. And when we go back here, what's interesting is it usually is the front end of a recession almost every single time. So this, looking at this alone, again, looking all the way to the right, you see that shoot up. It looks like we're already in recession. When we look at this other indicator, this is also very interesting, Mitch. This is the unemployment rate versus the job openings. And you see the trajectory of both the vacancy rate, which is kind of brownish, orangish, going down, and you see the unemployment rate going up. Now, going back to other previous recessions, other than the COVID recession, you see it's all out of whack right around 2019, 2020, right there, according to this graph. But that trajectory, look at right before the GFC, look at the blue line goes down, orange line goes up. Easiest way to explain this. Same thing right here with the dot-com bubble. Same thing right here in the 1990s. So you see that pattern right before recession. The last indicator before I let you go, Mitch, is the job openings PMES recession indicator. Now, this is very interesting because this is probably the clearest recessionary indicator that is suggesting we are already in recession. And this is a job openings. And the fact that the job openings has essentially, and we can see it clearly now here, Mitch, has been plummeting. Again, the job openings has been plummeting. Generally, that means we're already in recession. And when we go back to the GFC, you guys can see it. Look, it plummeted towards the middle to end actually of recession. Look at that. So it kept going up in the recession. Also in the 2000s, kept going up in the recession, didn't go down until after the recession. Very interesting. Same thing in the 1990s, Mitch. It goes up into recession, down after. And so you see very, very interesting trends as well when you go back and take a look at this. You constantly mention how it doesn't really matter. We need to focus on what we're going through. We can go to the grocery store and figure out we're already in recession. Mitch, I know those things. But let me just ask you, Mitch, do you think we are already in recession?
Yes. And we've been there for well over a year at this point. So the 3-month average, the comment from Goldman Sachs, from the fellow that wrote that, my question is 3-month average of what? In other words, where did you get the baseline data from? In other words, if somebody's just flapping their gums because they're preaching their book or trying to get a point across, that's perfectly fine. But in my world, that doesn't count. Why? Because indicators, generally speaking, are lagging. Nobody cares what the past was. The question is, where's this mess going? And I want the math. I don't really care what anybody says. I want something that's quantifiable. And it's not just me, don't get me wrong, but the point of the matter is, if you're going to talk, put some math on the table and tell me how this is actually happening. Give me a formula. Then the next thing is, there's multiple inputs that go into everybody's indicator. But the problem is those indicators are not necessarily connected to the larger picture. So last week we mentioned the Mulholland-Obis formula, which has been around for a long time, and it can take a whole bunch of uncorrelated items and then be able to predict forward. It's complicated, but it does exist. However, using standard deviation to show the outliers can also be applied to the employment numbers. Standard deviation is a hell of a lot clearer than any of these lagging indicators. You just simply go back month after month using real numbers, not this idea of what the goalposts have been moved by the Federal Reserve. You've got to use real numbers in order to be able to tell the real truth. Now, the problem is they don't want to tell the real truth. So what do you have? You've got politically motivated guesstimating. And that stuff is why we're in this mess where we're in. It's the same thing when you started off with Obama. What did he do? He accepted and then promoted politically motivated guesstimating.
And so again, guys, if you didn't catch that, and what I'm learning, one of the very powerful things I've got from Mitch to fight my own central appraisal districts, really anyone, is standard deviation. Okay, standard deviation is a requirement in many states to value your house, and they're not using that. And that's, Mitch was like, if only everyone understood what that meant. And again, it measures volatility, it figures out what the delta is, fraud, and it kind of can forecast stuff, but they're not using it. So already they're dead in the water. You guys will start to learn that as we make our way closer towards the protest season, which is going to start here in the next couple of months. But Mitch, let me ask you, a lot of people have said and have the premise that we can make more money than ever during a recession. Okay. So do you think it's, looking at that, you're saying we're already in recession, or at least in your opinion, these indicators would also demonstrate that? A lot of people have said, if you're going to make money, it has to be during the recession. To me, I'm like, well, if we're in recession and we get out of recession, then it wasn't really even barely of a recession. Do you think it's too late to make money, or do we have more time to make money, would you say?
I think people can make money in different environments depending on the rate of return that they're prepared to accept. If you're prepared to accept a 5 cap, which is a 5% yield on all cash in this environment, knowing that we're in a bubble, and if you're using other people's money as the investors and you don't have any money in it, well, sure, you're making money. But at the tail end of the day, if you're unclear where you stand and you're taking money from other people and you're putting that money in harm's way because you didn't stress test the what if probabilities and you didn't stress test even using standard deviation, then the reality is those people may very well end up losing. And that brings you right back to the bonds. That brings you right back to the treasuries. There's no guaranteed yield on a treasury. If you get your interest rate, that's one thing. If you lose principal, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And you can apply the rule of 72 right back to that issue to see how fast you'll lose it and not get it back.
And Mitch, honestly, I don't think that it's possible that we enter a shallow recession. I mean, yes, it's possible that the money printing continues, but I want to take the viewers and I'm going to show them, and we're going to talk about just how much money printing has really happened. Now, a lot of people think that, we should have, because of the lockdowns, it was a state of emergency. But nevertheless, Mitch, we have these indicators saying, hey, we're already in recession. I've been saying, you've been saying, a lot of people have been saying, we've been in recession since 2012. We were supposed to go into depression. We haven't even paid for that yet. And so there's just nowhere else to go. The debt is too heavy. They're not, the first two charts in the show, they are not paying their debt off. They're just acting like the debt doesn't exist, and they just keep piling on top of the existing debt. That's not how things work, right? And as citizens, that's not what we should put up with. But I want to take the viewers back into the past, okay? I'm not getting political, but we do have presidents, all right, whether we vote for them or not. And so we're going to start with listening to Trump, because I want you guys to remember he signed $6.2 trillion injected into the economy. Listen to this.
Now, I'm going to sign this, and it's a great honor. $6.2 trillion. I've never signed anything with a T on it. I don't know if I can handle this one, Mitch. We can't chicken out at this point. I don't think so, huh? All right, thank you all. Good, I wanted that to be a nice signature.
Now, I let that play for a little bit extra, Mitch, just because that's $6.2 trillion. And I thought it would be respectful just to, let's hear that pen one more time, because they say, Mitch, the pen is more mightier than the sword. And I think we just witnessed that. But here's the thing that I wanted to point out. Just because he signed that doesn't mean all of that money went to where he wanted it to go or went to the American household. A couple years later after that video, remember what Trump said about this.
Started negotiations on a new package to get urgently needed help to the American people. It's taken forever. However, the bill they are now planning to send back to my desk is much different than anticipated. It really is a disgrace. For example, among the more than 5,000 pages in this bill, which nobody in Congress has read because of its length and complexity, it's called the COVID Relief Bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID. This bill contains $85.5 million for assistance to Cambodia, $134 million to Burma, $1.3 billion for Egypt and the Egyptian military, which will go out and buy almost exclusively Russian military equipment. $25 million for democracy and gender programs in Pakistan. $505 million to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. $40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., which is not even open for business. $1 billion for the Smithsonian.
I think you said $1 billion for the Smithsonian. I got comments on Smithsonian. That's for another conspiracy theory video. But it didn't seem like, and the reason I wanted to play that video is I appreciate him at least acknowledging that the money that we're promised that's going to go to help us, it really doesn't go to help us. It sounded like it went everywhere but the American household. And so before I ask you the next question, I want to show the viewers, after all of these years, all of these decades of this money printing, super low interest rates, right? Congress going off on Alan Greenspan. Let's look at the debt without unfunded liabilities. $35 trillion in national debt. They're not paying this off. They're just increasing that and maintaining it. We're at 5.6 trillion in spending. And when we scroll down here, you can see where that goes to. Most of that goes to Social Security and net interest. Boom, just right off the bat right there. Poor money management. Right off the bat, you can see that. When we look here, Mitch, as far as of July 2024, it says it costs a shocking, whopping $956 billion to maintain the debt, which is more than what the form we just looked at. The form we just looked at said 14%. This is now saying 17%. I don't know what to believe. All I know, Mitch, is that right now the spending and that debt load is parabolic, and I'm paying for it. My children are paying for it. I should be thriving. I'm not thriving. Is this data even accurate, Mitch? And I mean, is there any way out at this point?
Okay, so a couple of things. What you saw with the initial video of President Trump is, again, people feeding information with the idea that we have a problem, yet not even understanding on a micro level, which is the local mom and pop. And what they're doing is they're inflating and trying to inflate that problem away, yet they do not understand or they do not care that inflation is a tax. So either way, mom and pop, which is everybody at the tail end of the day, if you own real estate, you're getting hurt. If you're in bonds, you're going to be very badly hurt. So there's kabuki theater going on here. It's not what you see, it's what you really don't see. And you end up in the cumulative compounding effect, right? So go all the way back to when President Trump signed that and look at how much debt has been added on to the point where you just were a minute ago when they're saying, well, it's $950 billion a year to service it. No, that is not right. Think of it this way. That would be the equivalent of roughly 1% to service the debt load, right? In reality, it's closer, somewhere around 4 trillion. The gross domestic product is hovering at about that 4 trillion. In other words, there's simply no way that the national debt plus the unfunded liabilities can be funded on $4 trillion, because you've got, give or take, let's just say for the sake of conversation, we know it's hovering around 163, 175 trillion. However, forget that. Let's just say that it's 100 trillion, okay? If you got 4 trillion in gross domestic product, that means that all your bonds, all your treasuries would have to be sub 4%. Everything, the reverse repo would have to be sub 4%. Clearly it's not. Cost of capital right now today is hovering at a minimum, probably around 5.25%. Therefore, somebody saying, well, it's only 950 billion to service it is wrong. I mean, the math just simply doesn't stack. And you have to have all boats rowing in the same direction to get out of this problem. And right now, the world hasn't even recognized, which is why we're here, everything on a local level, because the most important level is the local level. You can keep trying to blow this bubble up and say, we're going to kick the can down the road, and we're going to print money, we're going to do all this stuff. The truth of the matter is, yeah, no, you're not. And eventually the turkey is going to come home to roost. And we're there now. We are at the tipping point. So it's local. That's where you get your data from. That's what you focus on. And until people are beginning to wake up and realize that, all these talking heads are just that, hot air.
Well said, as usual. I mean, honestly, Mitch, shouldn't we have absolutely no debt? Isn't, the U.S. prospering? We have a strong economy, and we hear it all over the media. There's literally almost no media station that doesn't say the economy is thriving. But shouldn't we have no debt? And can you make an argument that all of the deficit, right, the money that we don't have, that 35 trillion, can you make an argument that 100% of that debt is from corruption? Or do you think it's just the corruption sprinkled in there and the fraud's holding that together? What is your take on whether or not we should even be in debt, Mitch, as a country?
If you call $1,600 toilets fraud and corruption, yeah, that's fraud and corruption. That's some of the stuff that's sprinkled into the national debt. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because it's the national debt plus the unfunded liabilities somewhere. I mean, nobody knows the truth, but let's just call it, for the sake of conversation, $163 trillion, give or take. So the point of the matter is, those unfunded liabilities, even if you said, something, we're going to try to fund these unfunded liabilities. We're going to try to fund them down, okay? 163 minus 46, 36, sorry. So give or take, you're 130 trillion. Even if you said we're going to try to fund them down, zero coupon bond at 1 trillion a year, where is the money going to come from? The answer is it isn't. When you've got 37% of your households right now today, on average across the state of Texas, as you saw in that chart from last week, that can't afford the roof over their head, you clearly cannot generate an extra $1 trillion. You can't even generate 1% of $1 trillion to pay this down. In other words, when I say it's kabuki theater, that's exactly what it is. This is not what you are seeing. What you are being told in the press is a straight up fraud.
Did you just say Kabuki Theater?
Kabuki
Listen to
theater.
this.
President Trump and Mitch McConnell are trying to put a corporate bailout ahead of millions of families. You know, it's families. It's simply wrong. We should be focusing on families. The White House and the United States Senate Republicans have proposed a $500 billion slush fund for corporations with almost no conditions. And you don't have to tell Americans where it's going to go for months. You don't have to explain what you did with it. The Trump administration could allow money for stock buybacks, for executive pay. Republicans refuse to increase Social Security at the same time, to forgive student loans, to take the necessary steps to stop evictions, ensure food and nutrition for vulnerable families. Senator McConnell should immediately allow a bipartisan vote on aggressive measures to help small businesses, workers, communities, so they reflect what they need and so they can get moving, so we can help them now. This is a time to help families, communities, and small businesses. People trying to pay their mortgages or their rent, student loans, urgent bills. They need help. They shouldn't have to pay for a corporate handout before they get the help they need. They need the help now.
I don't know about you, Mitch, but that kind of hyped me up a little bit. Yeah, I want us to do all those things. I want the Americans to be saved. But I'm wondering, though, Mitch, I'm wondering if those are all words. So let's take a quick look at what's going on right in front of our faces. Starting with the Zero Hedge article titled U.S. Food Insecurity, not security, insecurity surged under, I'm not getting political, Biden and Harris administration. This is from Saturday, September 7th. Now, here's what's interesting. When I scroll down here and I look at U.S. food insecurity on the rise, I mean, you see this. It's bad. The orange line represents households with children. So households with children, for obvious reasons, expenses are at the biggest risk. I know that I have 4 children. I mean, they're way more expensive than me, Mitch. I'm talking like, this is not even comparable. I mean, I've had the same suit for like 4 years. You know, I don't even know the last, I've got these shirts, all I'm buying is t-shirts, okay? But anyways, that's at 17.9%. The all households at 13.5%. What's interesting and also unfortunate is we haven't had that trajectory, all right? We haven't had that trajectory since the great financial crisis. All right, it may be, you know, it's about I'd say 2014 levels, Mitch. So it's about 2014 levels. But again, the trajectory, this is lagging data. We shouldn't have to wait for people to be on the streets, for blood to be on the streets to know that there's a problem, but that's how the system works. We also see that with this article from Saturday, September 7th as well, titled Social Security Facing $63 Trillion in Unfunded Liabilities. I brought this one up, guys, because that info that we just went over with the federal debt, the US government debt and spending, it's not including this. Again, it's not including this. We have a massive, massive problem going on. As far as what is this doing this to American citizens, taxpayers, this is an incredible article, again, from Zero Hedge. This one came to us on Sunday evening, actually, by Tyler Durham. Not sure if you guys know who that is, but I do. Now, mapping the shocking purchasing power disparity of $100 in each U.S. state. I thought this was super cool. This is comparing the states to one another right here, okay? So you can see that apparently my money in Texas goes further, apparently, at $103. But look at California. So your $100 in California is only worth about $88. Pretty crazy stuff. Look at East Coast. Look at that. 91, 94, 95. Kind of crazy how, you know, the panhandle here has some of the highest amounts, like 113, 112, another 113, 109. And yet those are some of the worst performing states from a foreclosure, bankruptcy standpoint, price crashing standpoint. We got a lot of interesting things going on here, Mitch, but can you tell us whether or not you think things have gotten better over the last 4 years, or have things gotten worse over the last 4 years? And it's not, Mitch, it's not a rhetorical question. So don't think that.
Well, the straight answer clearly is yes, things are getting progressively worse, but the way that that works in reality, we're right back to the words of cumulative compounding, because once the snowball starts, everything ramps up parabolic, and that's what you're seeing in the Fed chart. That's what you're seeing in the local charts, right? So when you just showed that food problem, that's real, but again, that's also lagging. because that is tied right back to what I've been harping on since you and I first met, which is that 37% of the households. Nothing else matters but the median household income for every given tax jurisdiction. If you can't define it and understand it, and it is your job, Mr. Hagar, Mr. State Comptroller, which was just shown to you in that chart, comparing those states. When you came out a week ago with gaslighting that memo that you sent to the public, that chart in red literally shows why you are wrong, why your staff is wrong. That's irrefutable. Your staff is paid to do a job. If they have a job and they can't do the job, then they shouldn't be there. All these talking heads have no business being there if they can't quantify one simple thing. Look at the median household income for your given tax jurisdiction. That's your engine. That's where the money comes from. And everything from that point falls down. It doesn't say, let's go print money and take it out through the Federal Reserve level, which is going to destroy the economic engine. You literally have created your own cascading, inverted amortization schedule. And therein lies the ultimate problem.
And it is a huge problem, Mitch. And obviously the Fed is spending money along with our government at parabolic levels, completely out of control levels. So let's kind of hone this in. Let's exit out now of this video and let's explain to the viewers, and maybe you can articulate this pretty well on how, yeah, okay, the Fed's doing that. Fed's wrecking us. We should be thriving. We're not. But explain to the viewers just how important it is to understand that ground zero is our households, that they have successfully tied us into this massive structure of bad debt, these overvaluation, everything bubble, the current collapse, manipulation of all these indicators. Explain, Mitch, how all of that, everything comes back to us. Like you said yourself, we are the economic engine. I want you to talk about ground zero, our homes.
The federal tax system that is collected by the IRS is a codified. That means they have several thousand pages of codified law from which they can collect taxes, income taxes. So you have the Federal Reserve up here doing federal, and at the local level, you have the central appraisal districts, and the central appraisal districts are providing money to the schools and the municipalities. That is two sets of data, both creating a tax on the back of the income providers, which are all mom and pops. Doesn't matter whether you work for the government or not, whoever you are. There's thousands of different types of jobs. All thousands are what I would consider mom and pop. And it really does come down to the fact that mom and pop is local. The engine are all those people creating those thousands of jobs. It's police officers, nurses, school teachers, metalsmiths, mechanics, architects, thousands of jobs, thousands of job titles. So you have the codified law at the federal level, and you have the lack of law, even though it's on the books, right? Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice is on the books. It's required in law. It's required in the Texas Property Tax Code. It's required under the Texas Constitution. These things are all tied at the hip. The problem is that when the central appraisal districts ignore Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, they ignore the Texas Property Tax Code, they ignore the Texas Constitution, and they ignore the US Constitution, unlike the IRS where it's codified and they're required to adhere to it, otherwise people get sued for real. Down here, those lawsuits haven't really started. As far as I know, we're the first group to actually grab and tie all those elements together. And that is why we are here doing this, to help mom and pop understand what's happening. In fact, what the central appraisal districts have done, in combination with what the Fed is doing by increasing the parabolic nature of the debt, they have stripped mom and pop's balance sheet. It's taken years to do it, but in truth, that is what they have done. And if you do not return the power to mom and pop by allowing them to own the asset under their feet, that's when real trouble starts. And mom and pop have to get a balance sheet. If you're going to buy and pay for a house over 30 years or 20 years, you are entitled to the ownership of that house, not to be paying taxes, real estate taxes, in perpetuity. You have federal taxes and you have the taxes down here that through the process of ignoring pretty well every law on the books at the CAD level, they have stripped your balance sheet. You cannot get caught up. The Fed up here has inverted what a balance sheet would be. The Fed has literally done, well, we'll just keep creating debt. So they've inverted an amortization schedule. An amortization schedule is supposed to allow you to pay down your debt over a set period of time, just like you would do with your house. It's the combination of these two things, Fed and the locality of the central appraisal districts, that have done the economic destruction.
Well said. And I'm going to get into the solution here in a second. And believe me, Mitch, I want to knock out the solution. I've been working tirelessly on putting my money where my mouth is and helping with the solution. But before I get there, I really want to know, man, you know, I think about this all the time, literally, because I don't know the answer here. Do you think they're going to allow it this time? Do you think they're going to allow us to stay in recession long enough, Mitch, to come back to some type of idea of fundamentals, some type of way to sustain all of this? Are they going to allow it? Or are they just going to say, you know, oh my gosh, the families, the children, unemployment, we need to print, and just keep kicking it down the road? What do you think is going to happen, man?
The solution is to get all boats rowing in the same direction, okay? How do you do that? Well, in truth, Chris Martenson actually opened up that box. And when he said, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want? I would want President Trump to stand on a stage and say, we are going to eliminate real estate tax in favor of a uniform states, STATES, sales tax. That combination would allow everybody to figure out slowly in a quantified manner how to back down this debt. My fear is if these things don't happen and the market moves, when the market wakes up and says, oh, damn, we've got a huge problem with these bonds. Once that problem starts, the bondholders will sue everybody in sight and you won't be able to stop the snowball. There is a way to put this thing together. It will be painful either way, but I'd rather be in front of it than have it run over me. And therein lies the reality. And Chris was right. I mean, he opened up the box and that's what I said.
Well said, Mitch. You know, and I'm going to let you fight the giants. Obviously, you're equipped to do that. Your intellect is great. But, you know, I want to talk about what solution I've been working on. One of the solutions that I can see that is going to be successful at creating change and saving us all money. And really, guys, I'm talking to you. And the solution is we got to fight apathy. The system is leaning on us not caring. Apathy is not caring. And so we have to fight that. We have to join our communities. We have to lead our communities, for one, to fight the tax assessors. If we do that, if we have more people like me and Mitch going to their communities, their HOAs, if you're renting like me, go to your landlord, help the community fight the tax assessor. That is one way we can take our futures and households back. And so again, you guys, remember in the description of this video, step 1, sign the petition. The petition means something. That only takes 10 seconds. You can literally do that right now. Now, number 2, when you have a little bit of time, please, guys, take about 45 minutes, hit the second link on this video, take the courses, and those courses will teach you all kinds of stuff like what's a CAD, what's a USPAP, and how do we get our money back. My friend Mitch, anything else you want to say before I let the viewers go, sir?
Yeah, so I try very hard not to be accusatory. However, when the data lines up and I realize that something is happening that's gaslighting the public and making the public think one thing when that is really not what they're seeing, it's very hard not to call it out for what it is. Like I said, Mr. Hagar's probably a very nice guy. However, if he's taking bad information, he is the state comptroller. He's got the authority. He knows there's a problem. And that is why just over the weekend, I literally sent a memo to the Texas Finance Committee, the Senate Committee, and said, look, it's the same thing. I offered to go to CAD, have 15 people have a conversation with me. I offered the state comptroller. I'm offering the exact same thing to the Texas Senate for one simple reason. hear this side of the story, which is the mom and pop side of the story, which is quantifiable by virtue of the median household income. And then you will see and learn what it really means, what this math under the hood really means. And I will walk you through, as long as you want to hear from me, I will walk you through from A to Z. I'll take it all the way up to the federal level. You may not want to hear it. You may disagree with me. That's your business. My business, I'm on the side of mom and pop. There's a real problem here. You created it, and I'm referring to the politicians in particular. You know there's a problem, and putting your head in the sand is not going to fix this problem. And this problem is getting worse, cumulative compounding by the hour.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mitch, you keep fighting, sir, and you keep calling them out because that's exactly what this nation needs. And I definitely appreciate it, my friend. You guys give us some comments below. Let us know if this video helped. And other than that, if you're out there investing in real estate, you guys already know we wish you luck and we hope you win.